if you've ever brought a creative idea to your team and watched everybody's eyes glaze over and your idea fall flat, you're going to want to listen to today's episode. Today, we're interviewing Francine Lasky. Francine is my best friend, a Vistage chair here in Chicago, and a facilitation expert. Let's go. Hi, I'm Beth Fahey, and welcome to Bad Boss Confessional, the podcast where leaders own their worst moments and then share what it took to become better. I've been a boss for over 30 years, and I'll be the first to admit, I didn't always get it right. Each week, I talk to entrepreneurs, founders, and change makers who've had to lead, learn, and grow the hard way. Because behind every great leader is a moment they wish they could do over. Today's guest is Francine Lasky, a brilliant facilitator and Vistage chair who walked into a room full of CEOs with a creative exercise and walked out questioning everything. This is a story about ego, rejection, and the power of regrouping with purpose. Anyway, welcome, Francine. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks, Beth. Fun to be here.
Yeah, awesome. We're good friends. We've shared a ton of stories about how we've messed things up. And how long have we known each other, right? We've known each other.
Probably really well about 6 years. I knew you before then, but before we kind of met on a chaise lounge somewhere where we were on a retreat and shared our most cringeworthy stories, some of which may come up here, some of which may not. We'll stay in the vault anyway. Yeah, probably about 6 years.
Okay. Yeah. And so we've grown a lot during that time period. What's so inspiring to me is that you can continue to grow after 50.
For sure.
Right?
And grow exponentially. We're not talking about, oh, I learned a new tennis swing. We're talking about really self-discovery, right? To kind of go, this is the way I've always been. Oh my gosh, like that's amazing, right?
Right. And sometimes it does take until you're 50 to kind of have the light bulb go on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And there's no shame in that. And so I think or is there? I don't know.
Maybe a little bit, like a little bit of shame. Sorry, Brene Brown, but maybe a little bit of shame. Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I have tons of stories. I'll probably be sharing them on this podcast. I'm not sure what people will think of me during the course of this run, but I just feel like we just need to share this stuff and normalize this learning and growing process because like look at all these books behind me. I call this my bookcase of credibility, right? This is tons of stuff that you can read and ingest and try to apply, but it always feels like we're failing a little bit.
I also think it always feels like somebody's doing better than you are, right? I think one of the things I've learned in my Vistage practice is one of the best parts is not about the fact that you're succeeding or failing. It's that other people are experiencing the same thing. You feel so alone as a boss that you read those books or you listen to the podcast and everybody's got a success story. And
Right.
you don't hear everybody's struggling with X or I have never figured this out, right? It sounds like you're so successful, but I still haven't figured out how to do Y, whatever it is.
When I'm working with teams, when I work with companies helping implement EOS, I work with leadership teams, and invariably within the first 3 sessions, they say, "So are we the worst team that you've ever worked with?" Because everybody thinks that they're just broken, and that they can't, there's no redemption. But that's what I've seen during this process, and what you see as a Vistage chair is the immense growth, especially because, when we see them, it's the time increments are, um, bigger, right? So you see people once a month as a Vistage chair. I see them once a quarter. And so we see a lot of growth in between the times that we see people, right?
Sometimes I think it's a little deceptive for us, right? Because they've had a whole month to grow and all of a sudden like I've seen them again. It's like I saw them yesterday, which really was a month ago and I'm like, they've made such progress. Well, that's because over the month they've had 15 times to practice whatever skill that we're working on and all of a sudden you see like this great growth and you're like, wow, look at that. Where there's plenty of times where you see them and they're like, they've made no progress at all. So
Yeah. And I think that's okay too, right? Sometimes you've got to be stuck for a while in order to want to get through it. And we call that hitting the ceiling. You're hitting a ceiling. Either you're hitting a ceiling as an organization, in your department, or personally. And so, that's where I think bosses have to decide, like, I'm sick of this and I can't keep doing this because it's not productive. It's not sustainable. So tell me your story, Francine. What was your moment?
so always hard to choose from a cringeworthy moment. Um, But as a boss, right, I struggle with this because I don't sign paychecks anymore. I used to. I don't do performance reviews anymore, though I used to. But as a Vistage chair, I absolutely function like a boss in kind of a more complex, kind of horizontal way. I lead a room full of high powered CEOs, and my job is to set the tone, it's to challenge them, to hold them accountable, and create that trust and growth. But the kicker is they don't have to listen to me. I don't have the same power as a boss in terms of their employment or their paycheck coming from me. They actually pay me in order to do that. So the authority is different. And the only leverage that I have is intention and the strength of the environment that I create. So, in a way, it's an ideal situation. It's what you want as a boss, that even if you didn't pay them, they would listen to you, right? So, that's what I have to do. There's no illusion of control, right? And remember, in the room, there's pretty strong personalities that are there, and I have to lead them and get them all to go, all these different strong personalities in the same direction. So I've had my bad days. And I think the one that I'd like to share is I walked in, it's very early in my Vistage practice, right? So very early when I took over a group, and that was from a very dynamic, very larger than life chair. And I took over this group. And if you've ever walked in where you've been the successor to somebody with a big personality, there's a whole kind of dynamic to that as well. And I have my own big personality, so I wanted to make my mark. Let's just kind of set the stage here. Like, here was a big personality. I'm a big personality. I want to kind of set the stage. So I walk into this meeting, one of my first meetings, and I got my stack of flashcards, right? And colored index cards and markers, and my enthusiasm, my energy is high, and I'm ready to go. And I'm like, we're going to now draw our leadership blind spots. Here are colored markers for everybody, and here's an index card. And this is really going to be so fundamental to how we understand each other and how we understand ourselves. And it was all this kind of creative exercise, and it was like a TED Talk meets like summer camp, right? Like it was going to be that exciting. So it just worked out. It just didn't work out exactly the way I thought, because the expressions on the faces of the people, here's what I thought it would look like. Here's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Right? They were so overwhelmed by this kind of energy and a creative exercise that they had never done before. And within like a minute, I get is this art class? Like,
Mm.
can we discuss EBITDA? Like, this would be more fun than drawing our leadership whatevers. I thought I was in a room of my teenagers because the eye rolls were just so loud. It was
Mm.
incredible. And for me, who prides myself on my creativity, it's one of the things that I love the most about the way that I approach it. It was so defeating because
Mm.
here I put my creativity out on a platter to all of these people,
Mm.
and I was rejected. I mean, it really felt like, the fourth grade lunch table when people are like, no, I'm going to go sit somewhere else. And these
Uh,
are people I wanted to admire. I needed to get their buy-in. And here I brought what I thought was my A game, and it was soundly rejected. And I'm sure that's something that's happened to you, where you brought what you thought was brilliant and it falls completely flat.
oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I have done stuff like this before. And I have, Lots of creative ideas. There's no shortage of ideas. Are they all good? Maybe 1 in 20,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's something that we share together is like more of a visionary bent as far as, having this creative and you can kind of see it all and you want people to buy into it and it's so exciting and you're trying to engage them. But you have to understand that you're catching them in the middle of a bunch of tasks or outcomes that they have in their head, things that they want to get out of the day or your meeting. And it it's not about you, right? And getting them to buy in and getting them to see what you see is sometimes it takes multiple iterations and multiple um, tellings of it, right? And we want it because you and I both work kind of fast. We want it yesterday. Like, come on, just catch up. And not everybody runs at our pace.
I think there's a duality. I think you're right. It's not about you. It is about you. I think there's two tracks, right? I think there's your expectation and what you walk into the room expecting, and then there's them as well. And you have to take both into account. Because if you only think about them, you don't, then I lose some of my energy. Like I'm
Right.
all about the servant and not about the giving or not about the leading. If I only think about me, then I don't get the result that I want. So I tell my CEOs all the time, you can do whatever you want in your business. Are you willing to accept the consequences? And me as a coach and as a leader, I'm here to point out some of the consequences you probably didn't even see. And that was the case in mine. If I would have had a coach to go into this, which you serve as in a lot of cases, but not in this case, my coach would have said, do you have the buy-in before you walk into the room? Because if you don't, walk in with all that energy, but you're going to have to work to catch people up for it. Or do you want to get some buy-in before you even walk into the room, or is that part of the process? And that's kind of, my lesson and my takeaway from it was I assumed they trust the process and I hadn't earned that yet, right? I was a new chair. I was new to them and I wanted the creativity to be an invitation, but I kind of didn't write the invitation clearly in terms of what I wanted them to do and to prepare them for it. Because you're right, whether I'm with CEOs or you're with your employees, there's a great saying, nobody else is the star of somebody else's movie. Like you're always the main character in your own movie. Nobody else is. So when you're thinking about it, I'm not the one they're most thinking about. They're thinking about dropping the kids off this morning and their wife says they should clean up their socks and whatever it is, whatever my activity is also being played. It's kind of the subplot, not the main plot.
Right. Good analogy. How long did it take you to realize that this had happened? Did you know immediately? Did you?
It's a great question. I knew immediately, but I will say, as most bosses and as I did as a boss, my emotions hijacked me before my intellect kicked in.
Mm,
So I felt the rejection in the room acutely, right? Like that was
mm,
like, oh my God, they just said, we don't want anything. And my head went to, we don't want anything to do with you. Maybe you should rethink your career choices. I spiraled so quickly, especially when they're rejecting something that I think I do well. Here's my creativity. Here's my, thinking outside the box. Nope, we don't want anything to do with that. That was not the actual what they were saying. They're saying, give us some time, give us some on ramp to buy in. But my mind went to, oh my God, this is crashing. I deserve to be here? You talked about imposter syndrome in your intro. That was absolutely what took
mm.
over right then. And only afterwards, when I really kind of sat down and went, what went wrong here? What was the thing? Was it really the whole exercise that was bad? No. What pieces can I do? And that takes experience, not to be able to just kind of crash and burn the whole thing. I'm not sure I would have been able to do that 10 years ago, to be able to dissect it like that.
So if you could replay that day
Mm.
and have a do-over, what would it look like?
And I've done it since, right? Where I can't ever do that first one again, right? Like that first, because first impressions make a big difference, right? But if I could do it over again, I would start to introduce, if that's the exercise I wanted to do. There's a couple ways. Like there's all sorts of different choices I could have made. So the first choice I could have made was introduce this particular exercise earlier, right? Let them get used to the idea, let them kind of sit with it and think about it a little bit. Different people process different ways. I also could have picked a different creative way to introduce. Like, let's think about maybe markers and, drawing is a little bit more, I need to gain some more trust before I can do that. Maybe we would have had use something with words, right? With a leadership. People are a little more comfortable with that. Maybe I would have had them in small groups. It's kind of a design process that I should have gone through. Also, another way I could have gone is introduce the purpose before I go into the exercise. And that's something that I'm still working on. My mind, you mentioned it, I go fast, and I'm like, I've already gotten to what the purpose is and gone, sometimes I don't express that as well as I should. So I've been, as a practice, trying to say the purpose of X is, and that gets people kind of at least in the mindset. It brings it more to the story as opposed to the subplot. Maybe it makes it the plot for just a little bit. So here's what the purpose, and to be very clear on what the purpose is to them, not to me.
Mm. Yeah, so there's a bit of ego check, some humility. Sounds like that you had to really do some reflection on that. So, was there anything in particular that influenced you during this time period? I always find like there's a book that shows up.
Absolutely, absolutely where I was going. So a couple of things for this particular instance, my favorite resource, and if anybody hasn't read it yet, especially if you run any kind of meeting, is Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering,
Mm.
is a Bible, right? And it reads really easy. It's not, kind of even a Simon Sinek, which I think reads pretty easy as well. But I think for her, it talks about any gathering, whether it's a business gathering or a personal gathering, a family reunion, a birthday party. She has a really great example there about a bridal shower. Especially if you're a creative, it allows you to define a creative space in a better way. And she talks about every gathering starts with a purpose. And the clearer you are on your purpose, the more work you do before the gathering, the better your gathering's going to be. And I think as bosses, we may walk into the conference room with the power to be able to say what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And that's all for us, not for the people sitting in the meeting. If you go in with a purpose and make sure that that's very well communicated to the people in the room, you're going to get better results. Your consequences are going to be better. It's
Right.
going to it looks like magic, right? It looks like, as a boss, when I would go in with a purpose kind of accidentally before I realized all of this, I'd be like, that was a great meeting. People were really on board with it. I wonder why that is. Well, the purpose, once you start being very explicit with your purpose, that magic happens all the time. You're like, maybe there's a causality there. If I say purpose, things go better in a meeting. So
Mm.
I think Priya Parker really talks about that in a lot of different kind of ways that you can express a purpose, a way that you can make pop-up rules. She talks about pop-up rules that say, I'll give you an example from one of my groups. The groups have very divergent communication styles. So if you know the DISC profiles, we have a lot of Ds, people who talk very forcefully in bullet points. But I also have some Cs. The Cs and DISCs are very detail oriented. They don't like to be interrupted. They speak a little bit slower than Ds, and they like to have some pauses. It drives the Ds crazy because they think that they're just not as smart as them. Absolutely. If you're a D out there, you're like, oh my God, yes. And the Cs are going, no, absolutely no. But I have one member who wanted to process an issue in Vistage. That's how we take care of issues, is we call it processing. And I made a pop-up rule that nobody was allowed to interrupt her while she was talking. And she's a C. Interruptions throw her off. Interruptions for me means, if you interrupted me, I'd be like, you're engaged. I love interrupt me all the time. See what you can do. That's totally okay for me, but not for her. So I made a pop-up rule that day that said when this person is processing, nobody's allowed to interrupt her. And as the facilitator that day, I enforced it to say, nope, time out. You can't interrupt. Like, let her finish her thought, no matter how long that takes. And just for that day, just for that person, it worked. So it kind of tells you can make a rule for that day or for the situation that would allow you to kind of make the meeting run smoother. So that's something I learned from her.
That is such great facilitation. And the thing is that when you're working with leaders like you are, they have to facilitate all the time. So they're having meetings outside of your Vistage meeting, they're having meetings all the time. And so coming into a meeting with a clear set of objectives and an agenda, I mean, mind-boggling, right? This is so basic. And yet so few of us come to our meetings with clear objectives and agenda. So your objectives would be that purpose that it's Priya Parker. Is that, do I have her
Yeah,
name right?
Priya Parker, The Art of Gathering. Yeah.
I did start listening to that book and it was really impactful. It's, one of the 20 books that I'm currently listening to right now. But that really hit me also, is the purpose of the gathering. And getting, folks to understand that you have to facilitate meetings and think about the individuals on the team and what they need. I think that was really insightful, and it shows deep empathy on your part, because not everybody is wired like us. And when we finally realize that, the world changes, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And I think if you're wired where you're like, okay, I can just walk into the room and make the meeting happen, or fundamentally, and this sounds so cold, but I'll be vulnerable in terms of they're going, I can control any meeting. Like I'm good. Like this is what I do, right? It'll be totally fine. Discounts the people that you really can't understand. And maybe depending on what your objective is, if your objective is to run the meeting, then fine. Go in without any preparation, go in without a purpose, go in without an agenda. That's fine. But usually that's not what the purpose is. The purpose is to get to an objective, collect information, make a collective decision. Why else would you have a meeting unless you wanted the people in the room to contribute in some way? Otherwise, have a presentation. Don't have a meeting. You're calling it something different. So maybe it would behoove you to take 5 minutes and gather some information before you walk into that meeting. This is a facilitation tip in terms of, in my practice, is I do, what's called immersion. I assume I don't know everything that's going to happen in the meeting. And so I may talk to one or two people that are in the meeting and do a little pre-meeting. And I don't like to take a lot of that time. That seems to me, as a boss, that would have seemed such a waste of time. Why don't we just go into the meeting? But if I'm starting with the end in mind and saying to myself, what do I want to accomplish in this meeting? I need input on whether we should do this marketing campaign. I really want to know how operations will see it. I want to see how marketing's going to see it. I want to see where the internal resources are going to go. That's my objective. All right, well, then maybe I need to have a short, brief conversation with operations before I walk into this meeting going, we're going to be talking about marketing. Is there anything I should know going in? I don't want to have the whole meeting before the meeting, but is there anything I should know before I go in? Is there personality conflicts that maybe you wouldn't be comfortable talking about in the meeting that I should be aware of? Okay, fine. Nope, there's no personality conflicts. But there is, we always get XYZ form is always filled out wrong when marketing does XYZ. Okay, that's good to know. So I can then walk in so much more prepared to know that that's a point of friction. And maybe it's only a point of friction for operations, but it allows the conversation to be so much more fruitful. So having that meeting before the meeting, short, to the point, making very clear what's the purpose of that meeting before the meeting, right? What are you trying to accomplish? I just want to get out any issues. I'm not going to try and solve them right now. I'm just going to get out any of those issues. Then when you walk in and facilitate, you're in so much of a better position to get to the answer or the objective, whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah, and coming prepared this is just maturing in your role as a leader and manager, right? Coming prepared, if you're doing EOS into your level 10s prior to Vistage or strategic coach, maybe you're actually reviewing the stuff that you're going to be learning that day. So it's kind of priming the pump. So many of us are building the plane as we're flying it. And that becomes almost an addiction, I think. You're addicted to the adrenaline, you're addicted to, this is how we move, we're a fast moving company, this is how entrepreneurs are. And you can get really caught up in that thinking and get stuck.
I think it's one of the reasons why I love EOS for my people. I think it takes away that dopamine hit. And I know that that sounds negative, but it's you feel so much more in control. Like you're not reveling in the chaos, you're reveling in the organization. You have to walk in with an agenda. The agenda is already set based on your past meeting, and that structure helps you move forward. So I absolutely think that the way EOS structured leads to that success, and that you get a dopamine hit out of the result, not about straightening out chaos. There's a slight difference there.
Yeah. That's awesome. So this has been very insightful. I love talking to you, Francine, because it's like brain candy for me. So I knew you'd be awesome as my first guest on this podcast. So looking back at your story, if it had a title, what would it be?
Such a good question. The first one that comes to mind is like when creativity sunk the ship, or going down with my flip chart, right? Like, or on my index cards. Like, so I just have a vision of me slowly sinking into the mud with my index cards above my head going, no, this is a great exercise. This is awesome. But I did correct myself. Like the next month I went in and I opened with my intention and I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it wasn't about our leadership blind spots or whatever it was. I set them up for creativity and whatever it is. So maybe it's maybe it's just going down with your flip chart. So like that could be the title. So
I love it. That's funny. And so I'm just curious, how did everybody react when you sort of did your mea culpa?
yeah, and I don't think I actually, probably in this case, and I'm not saying that it didn't happen more than once. You learn a lesson, and it doesn't magically stick with you all the time, especially when it's a fundamental part of your personality. I had to do it several times, and I got better at it, but there's still times where I kind of jumped ahead too fast or didn't make my purpose clear enough. There's times where I'll be like, okay, the purpose is da 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 da, and that was it. And sometimes people need a little bit more time and explanation than just one sentence. So um, they got better at it, we'll just say. And I got better at it, right? I realized I can make a mistake and it's not perfect. And it doesn't mean I have to question my career choices. So I would say they came halfway and I came halfway. I let myself fail a couple more times to say, all right, this is not, I can lose trust for a minute and then gain it back again. And next time I know what to do. I also asked them for their input. I said to them and tried to be very vulnerable in front of them to say, what could I do better? What are things that I can do? And a lot of times it'd be like, send it out before the meeting. We need some time to think about it. Okay, awesome. I don't need to surprise them with my creativity. I can put it out in advance and maybe get some feedback from people. So I tried to stop impressing them with my novelty, and I just showed up as myself. And sometimes that's going to be fine. And most of the time, it's going to be great.
And so how do you think that affected the relationships that you had with your members as a result of that?
Everybody should, especially as coaches, we should practice what we preach, which is vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. And every time you have to be vulnerable and you're like, they're going to think I'm so weak. And it's so not true. When you show up as your authentic self and say, look, I made a mistake. This is a model for how you can do it, to say, I want to do this better. I want to serve you better in whatever capacity you're serving your people. I want to make the company stronger. I want to increase profits. I want to increase engagement, whatever it is you're showing up as. When you say, that's my intention, there's my purpose again. How can I do this even better? You've given me granted me the authority as the leader. How do I do that? People are willing to help you and they respect you for it. There's times you're going to lose, right? There's people who are going to lose respect for you. That's okay. Like, is the one person in the room that you're not getting the respect for worth the other however many people are in the room? You'll gain respect overall.
Yeah.
By
And
just showing up
trust.
as oh my God, yeah.
Right. I think that when we have moments like that where we're just like, hey, I screwed this up. I could have done this better. In retrospect, I took a clarity break and Here's what I wish I would have done differently. Whenever we admit those kinds of things in front of our teams or individuals or even people in our personal life, it builds trust. And that's part of the reason for this whole podcast, is that I want people to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because the more that we demonstrate to other people that we don't have it all figured out, that we're building the plane as we're flying it, we're making the best decisions in the moment that we possibly can, this actually brings people closer to you than any achievement that you could possibly have.
It's counterintuitive. Everybody makes mistakes. Not everybody has success. So when you have success, it distances you from somebody, not necessarily brings them closer. Where if you can say, here's how I dealt with my mistake and then do better the next time, they can relate to that. That is a relatable, trust building activity. Success means I'm better than you, right? I did this, I got it achieved. Those are good too. Like that allows them to trust you with something else, but not the deep kind of trust that says, I'm the same as you. I understand you. I hear you. I mean, if COVID taught us nothing, it's that people need to be seen and heard, right? And that connection is the most important thing. And by being vulnerable, by showing your flaws and having that clarity break, saying I made a mistake, that brings you closer together for sure.
Yeah, totally. We'll come right back to Francine after a word from our sponsors. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. Do you love running on EOS? Try Strutty, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Strutty free at strutty.com. That's STRETY.com. Strutty, the EOS platform people love. And now back to my conversation with Francine. All right, so I'm going to ask all of my guests this question. If you were to get a tattoo
Ooh.
to remind yourself of your thing, whatever that thing is that you need to be working on all the time, what would it be and where would it be located?
Oh, wow. I like the where would it be located? Okay. Luckily, I've thought about this because I really have thought about if I had a word, what word would it be? Mine would be intention. So it totally fits in with, I believe you lead a life of intention. I believe in kind of a growth mindset. So growth mindset is Carol Dweck, which if your listeners have never heard of growth mindset, absolutely kind of a really cool way of saying anything is possible, but you have to do it with intention. So intention would be my word, and I probably would put it somewhere that I could see it all the time. So maybe on my wrist, like maybe I wouldn't do it on my hand because I just am afraid of pain too much for that. But I would imagine maybe my wrist or yeah, I guess it would be or my forearm, right? Somewhere where I could see it all the time. So it would be intention.
Cool. Do you have any tattoos?
I do. I do. I have one that I can show. Not that I have tons that I can't show, but I have my little diamond. And if you want to hear the story of the diamond. So my family plays a game called Five Crowns. Highly recommended for a family game. It's kind of like gin rummy, but with 5 suits. There are 5 of us in our family. It is a game we're kind of obsessed with. It's the thing that we do as a family. And if the world was ending tomorrow, my last day would be sitting around our kitchen table eating Ruffles and French onion dip and playing 5 Crowns with my family, with my 3 kids. Very specifically Ruffles and French onion dip. One day I walk home, this was last year, and my kids are all sitting and my kids are kind of all over the country now, but my daughter goes, I've got an idea. I think we should get family tattoos. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that sounds cringeworthy for 20-year-olds to get like family tattoos with their, and they're like, no, I really think this is it. And I'm like, okay, what would we get? And they're like, we would get the 5 suits of this 5 crowns because there's 5 of us. Each one of us is different. Each one of us has our own individual personality, but this is the thing that brings us together. And if I tell you it's the best thing I did last year, that night we went out, we had dinner with my mother-in-law. And after we have dinner with grandma, I'm like, let's go get tattoos. And they're like now? I'm like, yeah, now. I'm a D. I like to get stuff done right away. So we each picked which one we wanted and it all worked out. My daughter wanted a heart. My other daughter wanted the club. My husband got the spade. There's a star that's my son got. And then I was like, I want the diamond because it's blue and blue's my favorite color. And so we each got them, and it makes me so happy to look at mine. But honestly, it makes me even happier to the people I see the most, my family. When I see theirs, it's a symbol of like togetherness and what we do together and joy, because that's absolutely my happy place is when we're playing that game. So even though I lose all the time, but I think my daughter cheats, so it's totally fine. So.
I
like to win.
I love it. Yeah, I keep thinking about getting a tattoo, but I have nothing. I'm just fear of commitment.
Wait till you find the thing that you're like, nope, that's it. Like it just clicks to say, that is absolutely what I want to have. And once you find that, then no regrets. And it hurt, but it didn't hurt that bad. So
as we're wrapping up here, how has this growth affected other parts of your life?
It's a great question. I mean, work is a lot, but I think in my relationship with my husband, right, we have communication styles that are similar, but there's times, I think the times we've clashed the most, it's really because my intention is not clear. It's, why do you leave the toothpaste cap off? Like, and I'm the one who leaves the toothpaste cap off. We're kind of reverse genders there. So I'm the one who leaves it off. And it's like, I'm like, my purpose is not to annoy you, right? I don't leave it off just to annoy you. I leave it off because it's just not important to me. And when he communicates to me that says, it really is disproportionately important to me, I'll be like, okay, like now that I know what the purpose of putting it back on is, that's clearer to me. So I don't do it 100%, but don't judge me for my toothpaste cap. I think using that as a purpose, I think communication with my 20-year-old kids is really good. How to get a summer job. The reason we're telling you to get a job is not because we're in financial distress. It's because I'm teaching you that it's hard out there and you got to start developing the skills in order to find work and to advocate for yourself. And how do you find what you want to do? And sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do, right? So all of that is important. So stating that purpose and not assuming it, which is what I used to do in my head, and really communicating it better has helped in a lot of communication in lots of different places. How about you? Do you communicate your purpose?
After the fact, a lot of times. Unfortunately, I think you and I are wired similarly. In fact, I don't know, but maybe I should confess a story from my personal life. My husband and I don't fight very often. We just don't. We get along pretty well. We're pretty easygoing, except for yesterday. We had a disagreement, or I had a major disagreement, and he just was kind of caught off guard. It was a drive-by shooting. It stemmed from the fact that he can't read my mind, which is what? How can you, after 31 years of marriage, how can you not read my mind? My dad and my sister were coming over. My dad just turned 99 on Wednesday. And so we were having a big whoop-de-doo at the house barbecue. And I started cooking in the morning, and I was continuing to cook, throughout the day. I had some other errands that I was doing, but he disappeared like around an hour before everyone was supposed to get there. And then I hear baseball playing upstairs, and he's retreated, which this is a theme, right? He goes and hides and does things when he needs his, and this is the thing with Mike, is he needs his alone time, right? Prior to any sort of social engagement. He needs to fill the tank with like his stuff. And I'm downstairs and I'm thinking, I could use some help down here. Somebody could fluff the pillows, fold up the blankets, make sure that the trash is taken out, all the other stuff while I'm getting this magnificent meal ready. We kind of had a bit of a blow up. Not terrible. I mean, not screaming match or anything, but it's the same argument, right? We always have the same arguments. And so where could I have gotten better is communicating ahead of time and not putting it all on him. Hey, I'm going to need some help, even though I think he should be able to pick up on the clues that I need help. This ties back to everything that I used to do when I had my bakery business. Is I used to assume that people could just figure it out. Just figure it out. Don't you see what's going on? And what you have to understand is that people are not in your world, right? And they're just like you talked about before. They're thinking as the main character of their own story.
Yeah.
And so we have to be better about setting our purpose, the intention. Okay, so the purpose of yesterday, if to try your stuff on here, the purpose of yesterday for my family was to celebrate my dad's 99th year and to basically spoil him rotten with all his favorite food and stuff like that so that he could feel really special, which that did end up being the result. He felt very good about his pork chops, about his homemade applesauce, the corn on the cob. The fact that the guy can eat corn on the cob at 99 is kind
That's
of a
pretty
miracle.
impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my story. And that was my learning, I should say, is that you can get to an outcome and involve other people in the decision-making process and helping them collaborate with you, as opposed to you doing all the work and then getting resentful about doing all the work. Well, if you don't communicate, I need help, which I see often with my teams. You get people that are very frustrated because they're not getting any help, but they're also not making it an issue or talking about it. So
I'd call attention to your purpose as well. If your purpose was for your dad to enjoy all the foods and to have a great time, did the pillows really need to be fluffed and the trash really need to be taken out?
oh, for sure.
Did they? Would that, if the trash had not been taken out, could your dad still have enjoyed all those foods?
No, I meant for sure. You're right. You're correct. No, none of those things need to happen. And my dad is like so oblivious to all that stuff anyway. And so while I was furtively peeling the potatoes, I'm thinking, he doesn't care, Beth. He doesn't care. He doesn't even see it. Don't get so upset about this.
It's absolutely the stories we tell ourselves about what has to happen or what people are going to think. When you define your purpose, and that's one of Priya Parker's that she talks about in that book, when you really define your purpose, it allows you to decide what's really important and what's not, and then to let go of those other things. It's that whole let them from the Mel Robbins book that says, this is what's really important to me. This is the main goal of what we're talking about. I think one thing that's really interesting when you finally do identify those things, for you, it was what needed to be done and communicating that purpose. For me, it was making sure my creativity gets, I ask my members a lot, if something shows up at work, how does it show up at home? Like if you've got those expectations and you said at work, when you were a boss, you expected them to read your mind. Whatever those things are that we carry with us, they show up in both places, whether when it's work, whether it's friendships, whatever it is. And if you're working on it, you're going to find that it shows up better in other places as well. It's not just at business. It could be at home. It could be, if you're working on it at home, it'll show up better at business for sure.
So are you better at catching yourself now when you're starting to tell those stories?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And does it mean I've conquered it? Absolutely not. There's still things that I fundamentally bring with me that if somebody goes, that's a stupid idea, and it was my creative idea, like I'm like, let's make it blue and purple. And they'll be like, no, that's a stupid idea. It'll still hurt. But I think I recover faster. I think about it more. I approach it with intention. So still a work in progress, but definitely better. Definitely better.
Well, this has been a delight, a pleasure to talk to you, as it always is. What are you working on? Where can we find you? Like, give us all the Francine Lasky intel.
Absolutely. So I'm still building my groups. So my Vistage group, if you are a high performing leader who feels a little lonely, right? I think the reason people join Vistage, which is a group of peers that get together once a month, and I do some coaching with them as well, they get together because it's lonely at the top. And if you feel like you've always wanted somebody to talk about your issues with, but just don't have that person, don't have somebody who's an agenda free voice, this is the place where you're going to find life changing. And I do not say that hyperbolically, like it is life changing group of people. So if that's something of interest to you, you're in the Chicagoland area or could travel to Chicago, I'd love to be able to talk to you and see whether you're a fit for the group. I'm also doing a lot of facilitation now. So the training and facilitation, I think, is key. And it's not just about work, it's also in communities. I do believe that the world right now can use better conversations. And those conversations, because everybody's got emotions charged, you need somebody who's neutral in order to help facilitate those conversations so real work gets done. And that's what I try and do in my facilitation practice. I love it. It's what I was called to do, and it's a great career. I love doing what I'm doing.
You are living your life's purpose.
I am living my life's purpose. Thank you.
Again, it's been great to see you, and thank you so much for sharing your bad boss story.
My pleasure. Well, I kind of wish it never happened, but I'm glad I got to share it with somebody.
Yeah, but in a way, aren't you glad it did happen?
I am. And that is a key going forward, is to take your failures as opportunities to learn, to take whatever that shame, right? We started talking about shame. Shame is something that wants to kind of live in the dark. And once you bring it out, that's the only way that you can learn the lessons that you're supposed to learn and really grow. We both agree, and we've talked about this many times, that you only learn from failure. You don't really learn from success. So I'm hoping that your Great Boss workshops, this podcast will allow people to kind of bring that out, start to think about it in a way that says, what can I learn from this? That's a gift. So thank you for doing this podcast.
So what I'd like to know, and what our guests would like to know, is how can we get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can reach me through email, which is just Francine Lasky, Lasky, at gmail.com. That's probably the easiest way. You can also reach out I'm sure you'll have contact information in the show notes. And any questions, I am here to assist.
Well, I love you more than baby dachshunds.
I love that phrase. That's amazing.
You're the best. I'll see you soon. We'll get sushi soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Beth.
That was Francine Lasky, reminding us that every mistake is a mirror and an invitation. Her story shows what happens when we trade performance for purpose and how real leadership is often forged in discomfort. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe and share it with a fellow leader. You'll find links to the resources she mentioned, like The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, in the show notes. I'm Beth Fahey. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional, where every redemption starts with a cringeworthy moment.